I don't really review video games that much, but when I find out there's a video game tie-in to a franchise I love, I do make an exception. Fist of the North Star is a manga franchise from the early 1980s. Before you had badass anime heroes like Goku, Naruto, Luffy, or any of those guys, you had Kenshiro, the most badass anime character of them all, if you ask me. The story is about the aforementioned Kenshiro, a martial artist who gets his fiancée kidnapped by another martial artist. Depending on which adaptation of the manga and anime you watch, the end of the story can be very different, and even big points in the narrative shift. My personal favorite retelling of the story is the 1986 film Fist of the North Star, not to be confused with the live-action 1995 Fist of the North Star. But with the story having many different adaptations and retellings, it's inevitable that video games of the story would be released as well. And that is just what we are going to be talking about today. Specifically, the Hokuto No Ken quadrilogy on the NES and Famicom. Before we begin, the gameplay I supply is actually my own footage of me playing the game. And occasionally I will include full commentary if it's necessary for my review. Another thing I would like to point out is that I will be using fan-translated ROMs because I cannot read Japanese kanji. The first game was released in 1987, and it's rare that any video online specifically covers this game. The plot of the game specifically covers the first arc of the anime, being the Shin arc, at least to the best of my ability to comprehend the gameplay. Kenshiro must wander the world to find Yuria and save her from Shin, and the game itself is a fairly basic, side-scrolling beat-em-up, with every stage having a big boss battle at the end. From the beginning of the game, it is established that the basic goon enemies can be dealt with only one attack, either a punch where they will explode, like the famous meme, or a kick, where they will just magically disappear off the screen. One issue I kept running into with my playthrough was that I wasn't sure how to get through the buildings. Essentially what you want to do is, when you see the little icon saying you can go through the door, what you're going to want to do is hit the A and B buttons as well as up on the D-pad all at once. It may take you a few tries to figure it out, but once you do, it's pretty easy. Another complaint I see against the game is the lack of in-air attacks. Enemies in the game can all do air attacks, but Kenshiro cannot. One complaint I personally have with the game is the lack of the direction. This game has what I like to call wandering RPG syndrome. And what I mean by wandering RPG syndrome is how in RPG games, how most of the time you end up walking aimlessly with no clue of where you are going, or where you're supposed to go. On the first level, when you enter the cave, you'll keep walking forward and you'll see a door with an enterable icon. But the problem with this is it'll lead you right outside. What you're going to want to do is skip that door, and then 3 doors down, or maybe it's 2 doors down, is the actual door to go to the boss fight. One more popular complaint in the comment section of playthroughs I've found online is that they aren't sure what the story or context is behind the game. And unless you read the manga or watch the anime, you're not going to have any clue what's going on here. Overall, I think it should get a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad game by any means, but there are many technical mishaps on the development part that hindered it from being better than it could have been. Hokuto no Ken 2 is the second game in the Hokuto no Ken quadrilogy, and the only Famicom game to get an American release in the quadrilogy, known as Fist of the North Star in the US. The plot of the game is similar to the anime, you could say almost identical. The story is that after the death of Rao, Central Imperial Capital, a city ruled by Tinte, has been in great confusion. Kenshiro returns to assist the now-grown Bat and Lin as they lead the Hokuto army resistance against Tinte's corruption and Imperial forces. Kenshiro ventures into the capital, confronts the four generals of Gento and their leader Falco the Gold. The gameplay is actually a lot better than the first one, and you can even do attacks in midair. The bosses are layered in every stage. Usually there's one mini-boss on one stage that can be taken down in about 3 hits, but then a bigger boss later on. There are power-ups in the game that can actually really come in handy, especially with multiple enemies all at once. Overall, it's a great level up from the previous game, and it doesn't even have RPG wandering syndrome. It does in the first game, but it doesn't here, and that's a great fucking stand-up. I only have a few complaints with the game. The first one is that the stages are timed, when I feel like they really don't need to be. They had no timer in the first game, but I understood the reason. You're supposed to go out and look for things in the world, and the timer takes away from that experience. The timer says 90 seconds, but I think the timer is slow by 2 seconds at least. That's pretty much it. There's also a different version of the game where the graphics are darker and the boss fights are more difficult, and Kenshiro can even power up a little bit better. However, on the emulator I was playing it on, I was unable to get past the first boss. Thought on my first playthrough of the game that the first boss was impossible, but when I went to record footage for the game proving that the boss battle was impossible, I managed to beat him on the first try. It gets a solid 8 out of 10 on the gaming scale. It's almost perfect. And even with its imperfections, it's so fun to play. On to the next review. Now, Hokuto no Ken 3, to the best of my ability to comprehend, is a retelling of the original manga, covering the Shin Saga, much like the first game did. Now, the first 2 games are great, combat-hefty, beat-em-up platformer side-scrolling games. This thing is anything but. Initially, I had trouble playing the game because I couldn't find an English translation of the ROM for a minute, but when I did, I tried to the best of my ability to play it, and I would find myself getting frustrated with the world map because, first off, I believe the translated ROM I was playing was an error in multiple areas. For example, when I tried to go to a resale shop, it said I could sell the 7 scars. And I remember thinking, 7 scars? You mean the 7 scars on Kenshiro's chest? How the hell do you sell somebody 7 scars on their chest? On top of that, it has the same problem most old RPGs do, with you having to go with a lack of direction with little clue of where you're going. Now, before you go thinking I hate RPG games, there are great examples of the genre, like the original Legend of Zelda, Earthbound, Mario RPG, Pokemon Blue. The difference in those games compared to this, first of all, is the story isn't something that can be adapted well into a strictly RPG-style game. Fist of the North Star is about fighting. You can't do Fist of the North Star well in RPG form because RPG combat is all about taking turns. And Kenshiro's fights in the anime and in the old games end up being like 30 seconds. The whole point of Kenshiro is that he's inconceivably strong. When you are watching the show or reading the manga, he is the ultimate superhero type. You're never worried about Kenshiro having a real challenge. I mean, you're more likely to be worried about the hell Kenshiro is going to give the villain. And with all those strikes against the game, I'd have to give it a 3 out of 10. I mean, I'd love to rank it higher, and I'd love to enjoy the game, but I wanted an RPG version of this game to work, but it really just doesn't. Finally, Hokuto no Ken 4. Once again, another RPG like the prior entry. It feels like Hokuto no Ken 3 with almost no improvements. 1 out of 10. In closing, I'd like to say the first 2 are great fun games, but just avoid the last 2. They aren't very fun. While I was writing the script of this video, I got my hands on more Fist of the North Star games, including the PS1 video game Fist of the North Star Legend of the Savior, which is a Japanese exclusive. There's actually an eBay listing available in my country for only $25 for an official copy, and I'm tempted to buy it because I have a PS3 Super Slim, and it can play original PlayStation games. But I also know that there is a language barrier and region locks, so I probably won't. And I'd also like to say that, like, I don't want to be a game reviewer or a Fist of the North Star YouTuber, and I'm not any of those things. I'm really not. I just make videos about the things I'm interested in, like this, when I have creative little epiphanies. And this is going to be my content from now on, just creative epiphanies. I will probably be making more videos in the future, but don't expect too much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and a comment, subscribe, that kind of thing, share it around. Go play the first two for yourself, just avoid the last two. Hokuto No Ken 2 is super fun. Bye-bye.